using COVID-19 as a pretext. Dr. Nazreen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you and
Wa
welcome to the show.
alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brother. Jazakallah khair for inviting me to speak today.
Yes, now, obviously, I've read this piece that you've written, and this is a major concern, particularly for someone yourself. Your roots go back to Sri Lanka, and to see at this point in time the issue of forced cremations and also an anti-Muslim regime which is exploiting the pandemic to intensify its agenda against Islam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Absolutely, brother. This is a really concerning time for the Muslims of Sri Lanka, and really heartbreaking time as well. What you find the situation today is that Muslims in Sri Lanka are not only having to face the heartbreak of not being able to be with their loved ones when they die because of the coronavirus issue. They often isolate the patients, but they have to face a situation of not being able to do even their final Islamic rites upon them, not being able to bury them in peace. Can you imagine? And so since April 2020 this year, because of this Islamophobic policy by the anti-Muslim Buddhist nationalistic regime in Sri Lanka, you've had dozens of Muslims cremated, and many of them, forced cremation as well. Just last week, there was a story, it's been going around on social media. Many people may have heard about it. A 20-day-old Muslim baby boy who was forcibly cremated. Parents never gave any permission for it. And initially, it was negative for coronavirus when it went into hospital. The parents asked to do a repeat PCR test on the baby to prevent it from being cremated. And the authorities ruthlessly replied to the parents, if you want to do a repeat PCR test, you can do it on the ashes of the baby. This is the level of hatred. This is the level of Islamophobia that's affecting the Muslims of Sri Lanka at the moment. And it's very clear that this is a policy blatantly targeting the Muslim community, because you've had renowned virologists, nationally and internationally, virologists, epidemiologists, the WHO guidelines, which said that COVID victims can be safely buried without any public health concerns. Regardless of all of this and condemnation from human rights organizations and activists, the Sri Lankan government has continued to basically continue with this absurd mandatory cremation policy. And that shows you that absolutely this regime is exploiting this global pandemic in order to pander to the anti-Muslim Buddhist nationalistic elements of the society in Sri Lanka, as well as to further its own anti-Islam agenda within the country. Very clear this is the case. I mean, now Muslims in Sri Lanka are even scared of getting treatment, hospital treatment. My own aunt, she passed away about 3 weeks ago. And my family, she passed away. I mean, she was at home. When she was seriously ill at home, my family was terrified about taking her to the hospital for treatment. So she died at home. She died without the medication to ease her pain, to ease her discomfort, because this is what Muslims are going through in Sri Lanka at the moment. Terrified of giving birth in hospital in case their child dies and then is cremated without their permission. So today in Sri Lanka, Muslims cannot even die with dignity. This is the scale of Islamophobia which is affecting the Muslims in the country.
Yes. Now, also, Dr. Nazreen, this policy obviously is driven right from the top, from the government. And also, we've learned about even the judicial system, the Supreme Court rejecting applications, petitions made by civil society with regards to some of these cases that are brought to the courts.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the 1st of December, 12 petitions, which were from Muslim and Christian families, as well as civic society, they were brought to the Supreme Court in Sri Lanka. And this was a massive case. You had around almost 30 lawyers who were presenting this case to protect the rights, the fundamental rights of the religious minority within Sri Lanka. And the Supreme Court refused to even hear their cases. It threw the case out. I mean, it refused to hold even a hearing, and it gave no reason for throwing the case out without listening to the petitions, listening to the cases. And that shows you that, the Muslim minority in Sri Lanka, actually in many states today, many secular states today, actually powerless. they're actually powerless in overturning the various injustices against them. Look at what's going on in France, in India, and in other, states across the world, secular states across the world. Powerless shows you that rights are not fixed within these states. They can be here today and gone tomorrow. Today you're allowed to wear the hijab, tomorrow you're not. Today you're allowed to bury your dead, tomorrow you're not. It's so unpredictable, and God only knows what the future holds for the Muslims in Sri Lanka. I mean, if they are refusing Muslims to bury their dead, then what is the future for the Muslims in this small island?
Yes. Now, apart from just the virus and Dr. Nazreen, I just want to understand in Sri Lanka the level of hatred against Muslims on the ground on a day-to-day basis. What are some of the observations?
Okay, so basically, I mean, Muslims in Sri Lanka, you know that Sri Lanka is a Buddhist majority country, Buddhist, I mean, singular ethnic background, majority 70%. And actually, Muslims in Sri Lanka have faced discrimination for many, many decades in terms of getting into the best schools. Many of these schools don't allow girls to wear hijab. Getting higher positions in jobs. For many decades this has been the case, but since 2009, the end of the Tamil Sinhalese war, the target became the Muslim population, really, and the hatred that was spewed by specifically Buddhist nationalists within the society and monks, these hardline monks who have connections with the hardline monks in Myanmar, actually. The leader of this 969 movement, which was responsible in Myanmar for persecuting the Rohingya Muslims, was actually invited to Sri Lanka by a Buddhist nationalistic group called BBS to speak. And there's an alliance between these two movements to rally other Buddhist groups against Muslims and against Islam in the region. There's an anti-Islam pact between this. So this is the level of danger that you see Muslims facing within Sri Lanka in terms of the day-to-day issues that they face, especially since the bombing last year, the Easter bombings. You have sisters harassed on the streets, told that they need to remove their hijab if they go into certain shops, into certain buildings, even getting hospital treatment. There have been sisters who've been told by doctors, if you don't remove your hijab, you cannot get treatment. This is especially after the Easter bombing. Then you've had these mob attacks on Muslim communities. My cousin, in one of these, a mob was coming down his street. He had to hide his young children underneath the bed to protect them. That was the terror that the Muslims are facing at the moment there. You've had situations of mosques being burnt. You've had arbitrary arrests and discriminatory searches of Muslim houses. My father's house was searched in Sri Lanka. And my father, he passed away last year, but before he passed away, just a few weeks, he was an 8-year-old, bedridden, frail man who was living with my stepmother around her 70s. And yet the police came and they searched everything for Islamic material. I remember at this time, the Muslim community in Sri Lanka was so terrified. They were burning all kinds of Islamic literature, leaflets, books, CDs, in case something, would be taken out of context. You've had a campaign in Sri Lanka against halal labeling of food. Can you imagine? It's reached that level where they're saying one nation, one rule. We should not have halal label foods and products. A situation, you have the niqab ban in the country and call for boycotting of Muslim businesses, and total lies that have been propagated against the Muslim community. The idea that the Muslims are responsible for spreading this virus, the coronavirus. The idea that Muslim businesses, hotels and restaurants are putting sterilization medicine within food in order to sterilize the general society, the Sinhalese society, because their narrative is that Muslims want to take over the country. They are overpopulating the country, even though Muslims are only 10% of the population of Sri Lanka. So yes, Muslims today in Sri Lanka are living in fear, and they really are scared that they might face the same fate as their Muslim brothers and sisters in Myanmar, their Rohingya Muslim brothers and sisters.
Dr. Nazreen, I'm going to put you on hold. We're going to go for a quick ad break. We'll be back.
Relax beneath her serene sunsets. and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy
And
world-class
it's always good when you got somebody
cuisine
from there.
while we pamper you during your five-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
As winter grips the Northern Hemisphere, refugees, IDPs, and other vulnerable communities are doing all they can to survive. Winter is already the hardest time of year, and in the current global context, this year could be even worse. With your help, the Al Imdad Foundation is delivering life-saving winter warmth items in 12 countries globally, including Syria, Palestine, Yemen, Kashmir, and Pakistan. So be warm-hearted and sponsor a winter pack at just 600 Rand. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Dad, well, I've been chatting with an investment broker today and...
Broker? Did the broker tell you that our economy is a mess? There's bushfires in Australia, America wanted World War III, and now the coronavirus is traveling around the world.
Well, I also thought about purchasing some crypto.
Crypto? What's that, like another pyramid scheme? I don't trust what I can't see.
There's an apartment in Belito.
So all your family will be asking to stay there for free. And what if the government takes it away, eh?
Dad, I don't think it works like that.
I'll tell you what works. Gold. At your age, I invested in gold coins and it paid for your university fees and wedding. No contracts, no agreements. Your investment is in your hands and you own it. With a 70% growth in only 5 years, do you still doubt gold investment? Contact RJ Coin today, 031 202 4701, or visit them at 151 Lamini Road in Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment.
Fabric Direct, now open at 224 Brickfield Road, Overport, Durban, offering you a variety of dress fabrics, curtaining, upholstery, wallpaper, and deco. Fabric Direct, quality, price, and a range that speaks for itself. 224 Brickfield Road, Overport, Durban. Fabric Direct, definitely worth a visit.
Massive explosions have rocked Lebanon. Homes destroyed, hundreds of people missing, and many more have passed on. Over 300,000 people have also been displaced.
Africa.
The African Muslims Agency teams are on the ground, assisting with food, water, and medical supplies. Also supplying emergency medical equipment to 3 hospitals in Beirut. Donate now to an emergency aid pack at 2,000 rands or any amount. Your participation is required. Heal Lebanon. Call AMA now on 011 834 8685 or donate at African Muslims Agency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
At 9:35 a.m., we continue our discussion this morning with Dr. Nazreen Nawaz joining us out of the United Kingdom and talking about the Sri Lankan government exploiting the pandemic to intensify Islamophobia, denying basic human rights to Muslims, and particularly in the case of cremations, forced burials, and further ostracizing the Muslim community to intensify the the Islamophobic sentiment. Dr. Nazreen, just to continue now, we've seen many countries obviously expressing concerns. We've even seen governments like, for instance, the British government yesterday. We've seen a submission go through from our very own United Ulama Council of South Africa to the South African government, asking them to basically intervene regarding this issue. In the past, we've seen people like organizations like the OIC that express concerns as well, human rights commissions. Now, all of this seems to be of no avail because these are pleas urging the Sri Lankan government to reverse or to change the situation with regard to Muslims being buried in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, brother, alhamdulillah, what I can say from what I've seen is that the overwhelming support that the Muslims of Sri Lanka have from Muslims across the world has been absolutely amazing. The voices from Indonesia to Turkey to South Africa to Africa generally has been amazing. And it really reflects the love and the concern that the Muslim Ummah have for their brothers and sisters across the world. Even in a small island like Sri Lanka, a tiny island, Muslims globally are concerned. The Muslims of the Maldives, recently there was this issue that the burials should happen in the Maldives. The government in Maldives was saying, we will take the bodies. The Muslims in the Maldives were saying, this is nonsense, and telling the government that you should stand up to the Islamophobia within the country rather than pander to the Islamophobia of the Sri Lankan government. But in terms of other regimes and governments, like you say, the United Nations, has said that this is against international law. It's against the rights of religious minorities. The OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, has said we are concerned, not even that we condemn, but we concerned about the situation in Sri Lanka, but no action. And we're used to this, brother. We're absolutely used to this. We have no hope in the international community as Muslims from Sri Lanka to come to our aid. Did they come to the aid of 500,000 Syrian Muslims when they were being slaughtered? Did they come to the aid of the Muslims in Myanmar, thousands, when they were being persecuted? Have they removed the brutal occupation of Palestine and Kashmir over decades? So yes, we see the statements being issued. Yes, we see the empty condemnatory words, but no follow-up action. And the reason for that is very simple, that we live in a world order today, an international world order, where governments only move based upon economic interests and political interests. There is no sincere regard for the human needs of humanity. I mean, just yesterday, I think yesterday or this week, the International Criminal Court, it rejected the complaint brought by the Uyghur Muslims, where they had a dossier of huge evidence about China's persecution of the Uyghur Muslims. And the International Criminal Court rejected it because they said China had was a signatory to this agreement. So where are the Muslims supposed to go now? To the United Nations, which turned it back and turned its back on the Muslims, to the Western governments, who basically are business as usual with dictatorships like in India and in China. Just yesterday, Boris Johnson accepted to be the special guest of honor in the Republic celebrations in India. This is a state where Muslims are being lynched and where Muslims are being persecuted and discriminated in terms of their citizenship rights. So as Muslims, what we're saying is we need to take our affairs into our own hands as Muslims. Look back to our deen for the solution to the oppression of Muslims globally, inshallah.
Well, certainly, but coming back to Sri Lanka and to look at the situation on the ground. Now, obviously, these are very, very difficult times, Dr. Nazreen. Many of us who have lost loved ones during this pandemic haven't found closure under normal burial situations. And I suppose for the people on the ground, for someone, surprisingly, somebody rocking up at your door with a pot of ashes and saying, this is the ashes of your loved one. Obviously, these are issues. These are real issues. And this is where it's heartbreaking because you haven't found closure. And on top of it all, you're being exploited. You're being even charged for the ashes that they bring, or the charge for the cost of cremation.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. I mean, these are not just COVID victims, Muslim COVID victims that have been cremated. Actually, non-COVID Muslim victims have been cremated by mistake by the authorities. The first amongst these was Fatima Ranosa, a 44-year-old Muslim sister, mother of three. She went into hospital just with breathing problems, and she died there. And the authorities, they wanted to cremate her. They forced the family to cremate her. The next day, they found that she was negative for the virus. And this has happened to a number of Muslims within the country who have either tested negative or not been tested at all. The authorities have cremated them. And really, I always ask myself this question, how as an ummah have we come to the point where we cannot even die with dignity, right? We cannot even do the final religious rites of our loved ones in peace. How have you reached this situation? And there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that the knots of Islam will be untied one by one, right? And when one knot is untied, the Muslims will grab the next one. And he said the first knot to be untied will be that of ruling, and the last will be that of salah. And that is the reason, brother, that we're facing this situation as an ummah today, that the ruling system of Islam, the Khilafah system, is absent in the world today. Because this is a system that's not just a guardian for the Muslims underneath it, but it's a guardian for all Muslims, regardless of where they live. And we see this from a beautiful example in the 8th century when Muslims, actually near Sri Lanka, it was called Ceylon at that time. Some Muslims who were in a ship, traders, were captured by the oppressive Hindu ruler at that time in India. And the Khilafah at that time sent Muhammad ibn Qasim, the best general, to go and rescue them. And he did. A few Muslims, we're not talking about thousands like in Myanmar or again in Sri Lanka. We're talking about a few Muslims captured. The Khilafah, the guardian of the Muslims, sends its best general to go and rescue these Muslims. And we know that India was opened up to Islam at that time. And that's where, that's the fact that we don't have justice as Muslims because we don't have anyone to stand for us today. We have no body, no state, no government, no ruler to genuinely stand for us as Muslims today. So I don't expect any of these governments to respond today. I really don't. And what we're saying as Muslims, let's us unite. Let's us take our affairs and problems into our hands and our deen. And the Prophet ﷺ said it very clearly, the solution to oppression of the Muslims is to have a guardian of the Khilafah above us, the shield, the guardian over the Muslims. And this is, inshallah, how we address all the oppression of Muslims across the world today.
Well, Dr. Nazreen, I must say, Jazakallah, as always, for coming on and talking with us here at Salam Media.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, time, is of the essence, but our du'as are with you, our thoughts are with you, with your families, with everyone out in Sri Lanka as well, and the Ummah at large. And as always, our du'as are with you. Allah accept, Allah reward your efforts. And we thank you for coming on and sharing this platform with us on Salam Media this morning.
Jazakallah khair so much, brother, for giving us the opportunity to voice, to have a global voice for our ummah in Sri Lanka. May Allah
Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, brother.
Dr. Nazreen Nawaz joining us out of the United Kingdom, and clearly a very, very dire situation, a sad situation. And this is the problem right across the world. And the Sri Lankan government, no different from many governments right across the world. This right-wing and nationalist sentiment that is spreading, and again, blaming Muslims to the extent that Muslims are weaponizing the violence if an infected person's remains were released to them. Now, this is a level that the Sri Lankan government has taken this pandemic and blaming it on Muslims. The time is just gone 9:45 a.m. We come back and we'll be paying tribute to the life and the legacy of Maulana Nazim Hunter, rahimahullah.